Welcome, everybody. Today, Keira Crooms and I are here with Bill Gannon. And Bill is what I would call a presentation expert. And normally you think of public speaking, and the first thing you think of is the keynote stages and things like that. And we will get to that. But it's even more important, I think, to think about what happens on a day-to-day basis. So that's what we're going to talk about today is how you can elevate your influence with an awesome presentation. So Bill, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Elaine. In case you're wondering what that tremor was, it's not an earthquake in Nashville. I was chasing one of our cats off the table that I'm using on the porch, and it vibrated the whole table.
Cats are always welcome in our podcast.
I get
That's
it.
right.
I get it. So thanks for that. Yeah, I appreciate this so much, Elaine. Yeah, and Keira, this is obviously a subject that is super near and dear to my heart. I'm becoming a just bigger and bigger proponent for this notion of effective communication as it pertains to presentations. And what's important is not, I think, to transform in people's minds. Presentations aren't standing in front of a bunch of folks with PowerPoint, even though that's one of them. We're doing these other critical presentations every day of our lives with community meetings, inter-office meetings, etc. So yeah, these are all what I like to spend a lot of attention on because we've all sat in presentations that have been painful. And we can do better than that.
Oh, let's hope so. Yes, I've been in some really painful PowerPoint presentations, as I think we all have and can relate to. So
I agree. And I think that's what it is, right? That PowerPoint presentation and getting through it and seeing somebody go point by point by point and
reading all the words.
There's no personality. Yeah. No personality behind it.
So. I have a great executive buddy. He's a CEO who tells me, Bill, when I see it, the first thing I tell him is, I can read. So if you want me to read the slide, I can do that. If you want to tell me about the slide, that's fine, but don't read me the slide. So no one really gets trained in this. And that's one of my, I keep a lot of these little campaigns in my head, but think about college for a minute. And it starts right there. Capstone presentations that every undergrad or grad have had to do. Not so much talking about a PhD defense, although those, are related too, but they get all this academic advisory and they get all this keeping their subject on point, and then it's time to present. And I generally ask when I can meet them, how did the last presentations go? Well, no, they were good. The subject was good, right? Yeah. Oh yeah, they defended it. They explained it well. I said, how about the presentation itself? What about the slides? Oh yeah, well, those were okay. People are uncomfortable up there, and I'm going, I know they are. And how is it you don't make like giving a better presentation part of the approval process for this overall presentation that they're going to go out in the world now and do in different ways and still be nervous, and you're giving them a big pass because they put 15 points on the slide and charts up that you can't read and kind of talking to the screen, right? So it's just part of that. I don't know why we have such a big disconnect about really good presentation training and not.
It's important in every single thing we do in our careers, right? Because whether you're up in front of your peers at a meeting at the office, or you're on a sales call, or you're an entrepreneur who's about to pitch an investor, we need that skill.
We do. And one of the big challenges is that oftentimes we kind of give the presentation, we either say, do it like it's been done before, it's just your turn to give it, which is now going to invite a pretty much of a repeat presentation of what's happened in the past. And generally those aren't great. Quarterly reports to investors, those kind of things. And then there's we'll give it to the people who are kind of chatty, who, are best with talking to people. Well, that doesn't ensure a great presentation either.
Mm-hmm.
And furthermore, that's only 10% out there of the country anyway. So what happens to the other 90% who are not so chatty, who are not so able to stand in front of a room and feel anything else but kind of frozen up? Where's their training? Well, they don't need it. Well, of course they do. We just don't seem to find it. You tell me where they're doing it and I'll go talk to them, but I just don't see it.
I'm curious, what do you think is the biggest mistake people are making?
I'll go ahead and let you guys take the first vote, and then I'll go ahead and vote. So, Keira, what do you think? Biggest mistake in presentations, and again, wide category.
I think the biggest mistake people make is assuming you know what the audience wants without doing research, because you're always speaking to a wide variety of people. And so it is not going to be singular. So I think you have to actually do your research and speak in a way. Everyone learns differently. Everyone hears things differently. So you absolutely have to speak in a way that your audience is going to hear you. Otherwise, you lose them.
I think for
Excellent.
me, it's being very scripted. So regardless of the PowerPoint on the screen, which we talked about, you know, people tend to write down what they're going to say and then they read what they said they were going to say. But there's no, you lose, that's where you lose a lot of that human interaction, is just by reading your script verbatim and not being able to read the room or react to what people's faces and
It's
make
flat.
sure that you're on point.
Yeah.
I think those are both great answers. And I do think, to pick up on yours, Elaine, for a moment, and then to Keira, that falls under the I can't wait to get through this presentation
Yeah.
category, right? I always ask the audiences, who are the runners out there? And I see hands come up and I go, what's the best part of running? And, you know, people, the Zen. And I go, for me, it's stopping, right? Like there's nothing I enjoy more than putting in a good run and then stop running, because then I can feel, and I think that's a lot of the times what you get on those scripted presentations is, here it is. I'm going to give it from beginning to end, and then I can stop instead of truly connecting with the audience. And I think, Keira, right on the heels of yours, I put one of the biggest mistakes, I don't think a clear goal of the presentation is ever being established in that giver's mind. Like, what do I truly want done at the end of this presentation? And if you really concentrate on that, and you really do come up with a good, attainable goal, then everything that you do in that presentation should be serving that goal.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
And if it's not, edit it out, right? Just take it out. I do this on slides all the time. Does this slide serve your end goal? Well, we show it to investors. That's really not the question. It's like, does this serve the goal of this presentation? Well, maybe not this one. Out it goes, right? And this is, Keira, your point. Get a lot of stuff that isn't suited for the audience.
I think we hear that all the time, right? Start with the end in mind. Even in publishing, it's start with the end in mind and then, you know, work your way backwards. So I like that point a lot.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. One of the big ones, I think. But there's a bunch. I mean,
I'm sure.
And the list gets long. Presentation style, slides, pace of delivery, you name it. But those are if you concentrate on some of those first, I think the others start to come around. But no one's really given it that much thought either. They're just, quote, want to give it and be done.
And get it out of the way.
Right? In quotes.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk, I love all of that, and especially that conversation about the audience, because Keira's right. We see it in publishing all the time, and it's becoming more and more apparent that is where a big piece of the disconnect is at that audience level. You have what you want to say, but that doesn't mean it really is meaningful to the audience. And so I think the next piece I want to talk about, Bill, is conferences, because whenever, or maybe let's start with keynotes, because I think keynote conversations then lead to the broader conference experience. But typically, when people think about, the public speaking, like we talked about in the beginning, it's their focus on what the keynote is going to be and what that means. So do you want to talk a little bit about, because I know you also do coaching around the public speaking piece, how is that keynote different and how is your coaching different around what people are doing to prepare for that audience?
Thank you. It is interesting too, because some keynotes have slides, some don't. Some are very inspirational, some are very educational. There's all kinds of different tones and tonalities. And what I generally start with when I'm doing one right now with a neurologist out of Stanford and a NICU, neonatal ICU unit, mom, and they're presenting to a group of medical professionals. And they're going to have a keynote that is going to be very much around a very clear concept they have for helping NICU families. And here again, we start with, you're going to have a room full of medical professionals. Let's start there. What else do we know about these medical professionals? Well, they're going to be overworked and overscheduled like most. So they're not ready for a lot. And when we started to look at the keynote presentation slides of what they had prepared, I'm going, and you might have heard me talk about this at Selwell. It's too dense. It's too packed in the middle, no matter how smart these folks are, and they are plenty smart. You have to be respectful of the amount of brain share they can give you at any one time. And I encourage them to, I know all these points are important, but obviously two of them are more important than everything else, right? And they immediately go, yeah, that's true. Okay, good. Let's talk about those two, because if we can land there, right, then the keynote can take a more spatial attention to those 2 points, not pack them wall to wall with words, allow some time for engagement with the audience. And then when they ask the questions about those other points that you have, you can address them during Q&A or say, I'd be happy to talk about these, or summarize them quickly and say, we can talk about these as well. But to pack them all in and assuming that, that I got to get a lot in this keynote is one of the biggest mistakes of a keynote. Don't you just feel everybody's cup overflowing of information? Mm-hmm. And wow, who more than an overworked neonatal medical professionals who are in and out of ICUs all day long? I mean, so you just have to, it goes back to being really respectful of that audience. And if you're the keynote, you have such a responsibility to give them value for the next 40 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever your time is. And packing it in wall to wall is not giving value.
Yeah, and I can agree with that. I think because most people have a focus maximum. So we're at 20 minutes and you heard the same thing over and over and they're filling it up. Mm-hmm. Well, you're going to lose the audience. That's a long time to sit and listen to somebody talk without any engagement, any interaction, anything fun. So I think you're absolutely right about that.
And we didn't even talk here about engagement. And clearly that's another responsibility of a keynote also, mm-hmm. right? You want to keep the audience with you. I remember giving one at an ad conference in my other life. And I was up representing our company. And when I found out when I had to present, the conference went from Monday afternoon to Wednesday morning. And I was presenting on Tuesday at 4:00. Okay. And I'm like, this is the place where presentations go to die. Mm-hmm. And it was in New Orleans. And as much as I had good content, I was able to come up with, I hate to call it a gimmick, but it was New Orleans. I play a little saxophone. So I took out my soprano sax and I ripped into a chorus or two of When the Saints Go Marching In. And I was able to give it some bridge into what I was presenting, but I knew at that hour, you better do something to keep the audience with you. You're the one standing between them and cocktails. So you better do something to give them other than this is going to be really compelling. Get your notepad, get your phones ready to record. Can't do it. I mean, generally just does not. And that goes under that giving it. Let's just give it and get through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Bill, you mentioned Sell Well. So we
Yeah,
all were at Sell Well, Catherine Brown's
sure
conference
will.
in Houston last September. And I loved the way so you emceed it. And I love the way you guided everybody through each of those segments of the day
Yeah.
and set the tone for what was going to happen with the speaker. I thought that was super effective and important to keep things rolling and keep it lively and interesting. So thank you for that, first of
You're
all.
welcome. First of all, it was a lot of fun, but you're welcome.
And so what I noticed is, a lot of times when we're working with someone to publish a book, one of the opportunities that they're hoping that opens up is those keynote, speaking opportunities. But I think it's important now to move from just the keynote itself to that bigger concept of the conference experience and how the interaction between speakers and between sessions. So I think that's why your transitions were so important, really make the difference between something that's memorable and people go home and talk about it and they're posting about it on LinkedIn and doing all of those things, and things that people go, well, we lived through that one.
Right.
It's a bigger
There's an hour I'll never
experience.
get back.
Yeah.
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 Can you give us some sense of the bigger context? Because I think for people who are hoping to unlock those opportunities with their book are also hoping that they're going to be on that stage in front of their ideal clients, and that's even more reason, I think, to make it interactive and to keep the energy high. So how do you do that across a whole conference?
You're still presenting to a group of people. Now, what's really critical about a successful emceeing experience or conference host, if you will, is absolutely tying the pieces together. How does this concept marry with what we heard 2 hours earlier? So it's very important to be an effective listener at these. And I know we get so tired of hearing effective listening is so important, but it is mega important as an MC, because how you can make these points dovetail together is the difference between 6 different. You've probably heard this before. Let me interrupt myself. Someone gets mad because they were at a company for 6 years and they're not getting promoted, or they were at a company for 4 years and they're not getting promoted. And I heard this line once and have never forgotten it. And one of the problems that a very good hiring manager said was, what you have are 4 1-year experiences. I need you to build on those 4 years. How does 2 become better than 3 and 3 become better than 4? And to me, that is and a bit of an analogy about how the 2-hour segments should go in a conference, right? You want those 2 hours to build the next two, and by the third set of 2 hours, there's a lot of energy from the first two, and we come into that fourth 2 hour period and we are bringing it home, right? We're wrapping it all together, theming it, really reminding people of critical points so they feel like at the end of the day they walked out with a little bit of a, if you will, summary at the end that really gives them the bounce and really gives them the takeaways. So I think listening, critical, and then finding a way to link it. If it's somebody's key comment, if it's somebody else, whatever works. Just you're doing real-time origami, right? You're trying to make something out of all these pieces. So it's time to make it happen.
Yeah, Keira, I know you were particularly jazzed about one of Bill's exercises where we spent some time videoing each other. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I really love that. Number one, we got to know each other as the audience. And so it brought the energy level up. And once we got to know each other a little bit, we were more comfortable in the room. And I think it makes it more comfortable for the speaker as well. If we're feeling the energy and we're feeling, thrilled to be there. So I am curious about the exercises. How do you decide when you're in that kind of environment which exercise is the right one for that audience?
You do think about different ways. You want to be careful not to get gimmicky and waste people's time either. It's a real fine line, I think. This networking exercise that we all did, the quick introduction, they've done this before at conferences. I know that. I know other people have said, I want you to turn to the person to your right or left and introduce yourself. Now, but I think we add a little bit of fun to it with the videotaping, right? With the phone recording. So there's your little record that you can choose to or not review. But when you do review it, it's so much more powerful to see yourself in front of that camera, because one of the few times you're taking a minute to actually, oh my God, there's my face. I don't smile that much. I'm grinning too much, like I'm not even taking it. There's a lot of things you see in that make it fun. So I think that helps. And then we talk about, as long as everybody has gone that icebreaker, you start to show those phrases that we're so used to hearing, and everybody starts nodding their head. So when I see the head nods, Keira, I just keep rolling with it. You know, if I get the blank stares, I'm generally ready to pivot.
For a lot of people, that is the question mark. What comes next if you lose the room? Not everyone shows up as confidently as you do on the stage. You are really good on a stage. And sometimes what I've noticed is a lot of people will show up very confidently virtually in presentations, but on a stage, it's very, very different. So having that video just to see how am I showing up in front of somebody,
right?
That was remarkable. How confidently am I actually showing up in person? Because I'm great on camera, but in person, how does that come across?
I think that's so big of you to say that. And also, hiring managers say this all the time, right? I read the resume, it looks great. Did the web call, not bad.
Yeah.
In person, oh my gosh. Couldn't keep eyes anywhere else but around the room and looking down a lot and feeling uncomfortable in that physical presence. And one of the adages I share with a lot of my, especially students, when I'm working with graduate students and others, I'll say, look, no doubt you got the smarts. So do other people who will be in the job positions that you're in. But let me tell you what the big tiebreaker is. Give me two smart people with equal acumen, better communicators win.
Absolutely. What tips would you give somebody if they said, I don't show up as my best self in person? What would be your biggest recommendation for them?
And they have to go give something?
Yes.
Right. Practice, practice, and practice. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? The old joke in New York, right? Practice, practice, practice. And I know it sounds self-serving, and it don't mean to be, but I will say it as a generic. Coaches are out there. People that will listen to your presentation are out there, and people that will work with you on your PowerPoints are out there. And if you'll just open your mind to the fact that it's an important presentation, I want to really kill it, then what better situation than to go with a coach to help you guide you through it. I'm telling you, Keira, people want to live this. They believe everything else they can go get mentors for. No one believes they can go get a mentor to be a better presenter. It is a challenge because it is a category I look to expand. But after thinking about sales coaching and communication coaching, the notion of presentation coaching starts to land easier with people as they just hear it. It's just what people feel like they're alone on.
Yeah.
And they're not. And they can do a lot better.
And if you're not nailing your next presentation, you're leaving money on the table. I mean, that's the thing, because you're going to miss that promotion or that opportunity for a new job or making the most out of your next offer that you're working with your clients on. So I just can't say enough about how much I believe in just starting with the presentation, because nailing that leads to excellence in everything else that we just talked about.
Thank you, Elaine. And I remember you and I speaking about this during Sell Well. Authors that have new books may be good writers, and they may have brought a good pro in like yourself to help put it together. At some point, they have to sit in front of a room, and you can't keep reading excerpts your whole time and think that's connecting with everybody. since
Yeah.
they've already had the book probably, or they are fans of you. So to read back what they already know, but where do you bring your story? Where do you take them on the reason that passage was really important to me is this. That's kind of a storytelling component. But then there's just looking and engaging with people. Who doesn't want to hear an author who looks back at the audience and says, that's what I think, but I'd be interested in what you think? Who remembers? There's a lot of authors that are not comfortable expressing like that. They're much more comfortable getting it on record and then having it, and that makes it tough to promote it.
Yeah, it really does. Well, this podcast is all about elevating your influence. And I think we've given people a lot to think about in that regard. But the next thing I want them to know is where to find you. So, Bill, where can they find you?
Thank you, Elaine. You can find me by spelling my last name correctly. That's the big hurdle. When you spell Ganon, Ganon, you're probably going to find me. Or you'll find the fantasy evil character in Zelda, which is the other Ganon. You'll probably be able to tell the difference between the two when you see it. So when you find me, it's either with the Ganon group, and you can find me on LinkedIn, both in the Ganon group. But LinkedIn, I use the one shortcut, and that's B Ganon. So BGANON will get you to me on LinkedIn. But honestly, my website has my blogs. It has some video. It's got advice on presentation skills and the opportunity, of course, to meet and talk about it more if you need it. But that's how you find me, Elaine.
Thank you so much, Bill, for joining us. This was really good. I actually wrote down, what can I tell them that they don't already know? So that was a huge takeaway for me, and I really appreciate you. This was helpful.
Oh, great, Keira. Thank you. And I remember, Keira, you made a lovely line after Sell Well, and that was, if you want to be interesting, be interested. And it's a great adage. If you ever want a good tagline sign off, that's the one.
Wonderful.
Because without being interested and asking questions and being a good listener, it's hard to be an interesting person.
Very true.
That's the perfect wrap up. So thanks so much, Bill. And I will look forward to seeing you next time.
We're looking forward to it. Thanks, Elaine. Thanks, Keira.